All right, well, I don't know what to call this idea yet, so I'll just leave my name blank for the moment. All right, so the first condition is the current price, which is in NinjaTrader terminology, that's the closing price. So it needs to be greater than the lowest low of the past 12 bars. That was going to be a comparison solver. So whenever you need something greater than or less than something else, that's what the comparison solver does. All right. So let's grab a comparison solver right here in the middle. Connect that in. And all right, so that's the closing price greater than lowest low of, there you go, lowest low of 12 bars. All right, so our first, input is the current price, which is the closing price. So we're going to change input A to price, and there it is. The close is already set to default. And input B, that's going to be the lowest low of the last 12 bars. So again, our input type is going to be price. So for a long, we want to use the low price, and if it's a short, then it's going to be the opposite condition. So we'd be using the high of the bar. And for the look back, we want 12 bars back, right? And then we now have this look back processing. And so for a long, we want the lowest low of the last 12 bars. So we want the minimum value, right? The minimum value of all the low prices for the last 12 bars. And so if it was a short, then we'd want the opposite condition, which would be the maximum value of all the high prices of the last 12 bars, right? Or in other words, the highest high of, the maximum value would be the highest high of the last 12 bars. And so now we need to check the outputs here. And yeah, so we want closing price to be greater than all these lows, these lowest lows. Yeah, so we want A greater than B. Yep. So the current price is A, right? That's input A, the closing price. And so B is input B, which is the lowest low of the last 12 bars. So the long output set correctly, and then the short output is set correctly already. So we're just going to use the default settings here. Okay, so that's done. So one thing I'm noticing here is, right, we're always getting a long and a short because this statement is always true. So I can only assume that the lowest low, of the last 12 bars does not include the current bar. Right, so would that be correct, Dean? Dean says yes. Okay. All right, so we're going to have to make a modification here. So, right, so the issue that we ran into is, when we're finding the lowest low of the last 12 bars, it also includes the current bar, right? It includes the bar, that includes the bar for input A. So we will need to use a helper indicator. Let's see. So let's put this back to indicator value. And let's see, go into Shark Indicators, and go into Tools, and we're going to use Chameleon. Let's see here, Chameleon. Yeah, we're going to use Chameleon. And with Chameleon, it has this look back period as well. So we can say, look back, the last 12 bars. And then the outputs here, the high bounds, is now going to provide us with the highest high of the last 12 bars. And the low bounds is going to provide us with the lowest low of the last 12 bars. So for a long signal, we're looking at the low prices. And so for a short signal, we'd be looking at the high prices, right? So yeah, that's Chameleon set up there. So all we had to do is just adjust our look back, to a 12 period look back there. And now with Chameleon, we can use this displacement function. So we can put in a displacement of 1, right? And that effectively says, well, go back an extra bar there and do that. So, okay, so now, so now we can see that every once in a while, right? So there's the closing price of that bar. And compared to the last 12 bars, this close is below the lowest low of the last 12 bars. And it looks like, my guess is that looks like the lowest low of the last 12 bars. Yeah, so the last 12 bars goes back to here where my cursor's at. Yeah, so that's the lowest low. And of course the close is below that. So there's no long output, right? Because remember, we want the current price to be greater than. So now, if we go to the next bar, there's the close. And now the lowest low is right there. And so yeah, the close is greater than the lowest low, the last 12 bars. And so we get a long output. All right, so there we go. We got that working. So let's move on to the next one. All right, so now we need the closing price to be less than the highs of the last 5 bars. Okay, last 5 bars. So, yeah, so we want something similar to this comparison solver. So I'm going to switch over to the Solvers tab, make a copy of that node, and adjust the name here. So now we want the close to be less than the highest high of the last 5 bars. There we go, last 5 bars. All right. So we need to go into Chameleon here, and our look back period is now going to be reduced down to 5 bars, and we're now using the high prices for this long signal. Right, so remember, we're building a long signal here. So doing this, comparing the closing price to the highest highs is for building a long signal. So now we're going to use the high bounds for a long signal, and then the low, the low prices for a short signal. Okay, so we have Chameleon adjusted, and we still need that displacement of 1, but now we want input A to be less than input B. So we don't want A greater than B, we want A less than B. So now we need to reverse our outputs. Right, so there we go. So now, remember, the current price or the closing price is A, and we want that to be less than the highest highs. So we want A less than B. So we turn that on and turn the other outputs off. All right, so there we go. So now we've rearranged or adjusted the settings for this comparison solver. So now we can go back to the logic board, go to our existing nodes, and there is that new solver comparing the close the close being less than the highest high of the last 5 bars. Put that on the board. There. All right, so now we can start joining those conditions together. And take a look. There. All right. Yeah, you can see here we still have this kind of benign error message here when using Chameleon sometimes. So if that happens, all I got to do is just we'll just close BloodHound, and we can just reload the chart, and there you go, it goes away. So yeah, so what we're seeing right now is when we get, when we get a long and a short together, we're seeing both of these conditions true for both a long signal and a short signal together. So, and every once in a while, like right here, we can see we only have a long output. So where the closing price is of these 2 bars, these 2 conditions have been met for a long signal. So on these 2 bars. Okay, so now let's move on to the third condition here, or the third rule. So we want the closing price greater than the 17 EMA. All right. So we need another comparison solver. Put that on there. All right, let's name this. All right, so once again, input A is going to be the close of the bar. So let's switch this over to price. There we go. And input B, that's going to be the EMA. So let's open up the indicator, scroll down, and select the EMA. And there we go, 17 period. And again, we want A greater than the EMA. And so we have A greater than B is the default. And so there we have it. Let's see, the red line is the EMA 17. All right. So as long as the close of the bar is above the red line, right, we get a long output. And then when the close of the bar is below the red line, right, we get a short output. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have now. Connect all that together. There we go. So now we're getting some additional filtering done here. And all right, another condition. So we need the close greater than the open. So in other words, we need an up bar, right? That's simply, just a logical description, or our mathematical description of an up bar. So let's just grab a bar direction solver, connect that in like so. All right, so now we have even further filtering going on. Now we can drop down to the next condition here. All right, so the last 3 dots of the EMA, I don't have dots on my chart, I've got a line. So this would be bars. So the last 3 bars of the EMA are sloping upward. All right. So we now need a slope solver. And so we need to plug in the EMA there. So let's see. EMA 17. There. All right. So let's change the input to the EMA. There's our EMA. And let's adjust it to a 17 period. there, right? So the default, settings for the slope solver is, it's looking at the last two bars, right? So what we're looking at is, the slope of, that bar and the slope of that. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. There you go. I want that dot. There we go. Right? So, yeah, the slope solver is always telling you the slope, of the most recent two bars. But we would need to go back to a third bar. So we also need to check the slope, right, of the last two bars. And we can do that. We could either create, first let me say that the slope period doesn't do what we want to do. So the slope period adds another SMA smoothing to whatever your indicator is. So that would just be, adding a further smoothing, SMA smoothing, to whatever your input indicator is. Right, so we don't want to add further smoothing. We just want to look back to the, we want to go back one bar and look back to the third and second bar. Check the slope of the third and second bar. And so that would be the same as using a delay mechanism, right? Or we could use the look back. Actually, let's see. Yeah. Actually, I could just use the look back node itself. And let's see, we want to turn the displacement off. Set the look back period to 2. And the mode is going to be minimum. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong line. Okay. The red line. There we go. So, let's look at this right here. So, again, looking at the red line, right? It's sloping down until it gets to this bar, and then it starts sloping up, right? But we need 2 bars of it sloping up. So on the very first bar where it starts sloping up, well, if you look back, that's sloping down and then sloping up. So, right? So so this, this condition of, the last 3 bars of the EMA sloping up, well, that's not true on this bar. So let's zoom out like that, right? So the last, so the last 3 dots, or the last, on the last 3 bars, it's not all sloping up, right? We got the last 2 are sloping down and then it slopes up. So that condition is not true on the first bar where the slope reverses directions. So now when we get to the next one, now from here to here it's sloping up, and then from here to here it's sloping up. So there we go. Okay, so using this look back, with a 2 bar period look back, and we want the mode on minimum, so that takes care of that. So, all right, so looking at our results, so now let's connect this into the AND node. All right, a few more signals disappeared. Yeah, I only saw a couple disappear there. All right, so now we're down to the last condition here. We need price between a 3-period EMA of the high price, and so we need it below. So we need it below this 3 EMA of the high prices and above the 8 EMA. Yeah, so in other words, we need the closing price to be in between the 2 white lines. All right, so we need another 2 more comparison solvers. So let's start with 1. All right, so once again, well, actually, let's give this a name first. All right, so input A is going to be price again. So yeah, we want the close of the bar. And then input B is going to be that 3-period EMA of the high prices. So let's grab the EMA again. There's the EMA. And set it to a 3-period. So now we need to get the high prices, right, fed into the EMA, or the high prices nested into the EMA. And to do that, we're going to use Chameleon. Once again, we're going to use Chameleon to do that. So we select Chameleon and then hit the nested input button. And now we can see Chameleon is being fed into the EMA. And so for Chameleon, yeah, we want for a long, we want the high prices for a long signal. And I'm assuming we're going to want the low prices for a short signal. Yeah. And that's it, right? Just select, the prices that you want fed into the EMA, and that's it. And so let's see, we want the current price is going to be below the 3 EMA high. Okay. So we want A less than B for a long signal. So there we go. Set that like that. There. Yeah, so if we take a look at this, right, so the solid white line is the 3-period EMA. And so, yeah, every once in a while, the close of the bar is above the solid white line. So then we get no long output. And if the close of the bar is below the solid white line, then no short output. Yeah. Okay, so that's the 3 EMA, 3-period EMA. So now we need to build the comparison solver for the 8 EMA. All right, so let's go back over to our solvers tab. We can make a copy of this. And so now we need the close to be greater or above the EMA 8. And that's just, as we can see, that's just the EMA of the closing price as normal. So, all right, so let's go into the EMA and let's kind of fix this up here. So let's remove Chameleon from it and adjust the period to 8. And there we go. And now we want the close greater than the EMA. So we want A greater than B. So let's reverse the outputs again. Like so. There. Okay. So that's the 8 EMA. So now let's go back to the logic board and go to our existing nodes. And there's that new comparison solver that we just built. Put that on the board. And there we have it. So let's connect this up. Let's move this down to the middle and start connecting things up. There. All right. And there we have it. So let's take a look at some of these signals here and qualify them. All right, so that closing price is it is above the lowest low of the last 12 bars. Yeah, so it's up here. Let's see. Yeah, so there's the lowest low. Yeah, that would be our lowest low. And the highest high of the last 5 bars, that would be that guy right there. And so the close is in between. Let's see. It is above the red EMA, or the 17 EMA, and it's in between the 2 white EMAs. Oh, and it's an up bar. That's right. So we needed it to be an up bar, and it is an up bar. So, all right, that one looks good. Let's look at the next signal. Okay, so there's the highest high, and that's probably still the lowest low, the last 12 bars. And so our closing price is in between those. The close is above the red line, and it's in between the 2 white lines, and it's an up bar. Yeah, same with the next bar. Yeah, that's still the high, and that's still the lowest low, the last 12 bars. Yeah. So, all right, there we have it. So this is primarily a bunch of comparison solvers, comparing the, current price, to some other price conditions in the EMA, combined with a slope solver, so that, oh yeah, I was totally ignoring that. So, yeah, again, the slope of the 17 EMA has been sloping up, the entire time for at least 2 bars back.